This is the case of the Hazelwood School District versus Kulhmeier. This case is dated back to May 1983, where in a Journalism 2 class at Hazelwood East High School, located in St. Louis County in Missouri, the students in that class sued their school district. The teachers and the school principal, Robert E. Reynolds, found that some of their articles were inappropriate for the school-sponsored student paper called The Spectrum, and then they decided to remove those articles. These inappropriate articles spoke about teen pregnancy, those who were and are currently pregnant, and also an interview with a student going through their parents' divorce. The principal was scared for the students in the articles to not remain anonymous, even with their fake names, and also how the parents will not be able to speak out and respond about the divorce article. This event led to Catherine Kulhmeier, one of the students in the class, and as well as two other students, to file an impactful case on the Hazelwood School District, where they argued that their First Amendment rights were violated. The case ruling began on October 13th of 1987. The students first went to the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Missouri, and the ruling came out that their First Amendment rights weren't violated. The judges indicated that the publication of the newspapers are part of an integral school's educational function. The students then went and won their case at the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, where the judges relied on the Supreme Court's 1969 decision in Tinker v. Des Moines. They argued that this was part of the school's curriculum, but also a public forum, and a writ of certiorari was granted. However, this ruling was then appealed to the Supreme Court, for which they overturned the Courts of Appeals ruling. The decision date was January 13, 1988, in a 5-3 ruling in the Supreme Court. Hazelwood School District was favored. The court said that the students' freedom of speech were not violated. It was a school-sponsored paper showing a legitimate interest in preventing the publication of articles that were deemed inappropriate. This started a giant step back for student press and speech rights. The Supreme Court held that schools might restrict what is published in student newspapers if the papers have not been established as public forums. The court also decided that schools may limit the First Amendment rights of students if the student's speech is inconsistent with the school's fundamental education mission. The school doesn't have to adhere to the First Amendment completely. Throughout this all, the students argued that their First Amendment rights were violated. The First Amendment rights state that it's an amendment in the U.S. Constitution Bill of Rights that prohibits Congress from making any law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the exercise thereof, abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and petition the government. The social impact at the time is what you would have expected. Unlike the earlier 1969 Supreme Court ruling that established the so-called Tinker Standard, where students can have their First Amendment rights unless it affects the school's environment. But in the Hazelwood ruling, it was declared that students do shed some of their constitutional rights at the schoolhouse gate, and this ruling truly started the disease of student censorship. Now, student journalists are now more vulnerable than ever to school censorship and punishment, and many people are concerned. Even some state governments have passed laws to have protection over these student journalists. There is still a presence of this Hazelwood incident present day now, and it has not been resolved, and there is greatly expanding school control over student speech. For example, in a case in 2011, a federal district court used the Hazelwood ruling to support a decision by Auburn University at Montgomery to remove a 51-year-old graduate student from their nursing program. The student argued that she had been unlawfully expelled for speaking out about perceived problems with the program's disciplinary policies. As another example, one that's very similar to this landmark case, In Chicago, Illinois, Stevenson High School in 2009, there was a student newspaper article talking about drug use, which had an anonymous student discussing the ease of obtaining drugs on campus. In response, Frank Lamonte, the executive director of Student Press Law Center, states that Stevenson was able to hide behind the fig leaf of bad journalism to conceal what was transparently its true motivation, protecting the carefully crafted PR image of the school. Even with these two added cases, there has been so many other cases that relate to this limiting of students' freedom. However, some steps are being taken towards students' First Amendment freedoms. Some of the states include Arkansas, Colorado, California, Iowa, Kansas, Massachusetts, and Oregon. And they have laws that protect the First Amendment rights of students, aka the Tinder Standard. In conclusion, this is a very impactful and important landmark case that has changed the meaning of the First Amendment and has affected us students then, and it continues on today.